Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Kol Neshama. We learn one parak of Mishnayos every day. Um, Today's parak is parak Gimel of Mesechus Demai. Today's series sponsored Lila Nishmas Aaron Nachum and Simcha Cohen, Yeshua Mordechai ben Shepsel, Bracha Sarba Shmuel Leib, Yom Moshe ben Yosef, Moshe Yitzchak ben Rav Shraga Feivel. May the Neshamas have an aliyah and for Shlema Adasar Basleya. So Shar Chole Yisrael. Amen. Okay, Perek Gimel. Perek Gimel starts off continuing with discussing the the Amaratzim and Havi Meiser. So since most of the Ami are Meiser take Meiser from their produce, so the Chachamim give a few leniencies when it comes regarding Demai. So this is actually a continuation of what we started in Perek Aleph. So Ma'achil Mishnah starts off Ma'achilin es Haniyim Demai. You can feed the Demai to the poor people. And people who are begging at the door, they can be given a meal from the Demai, which they can eat without taking Meiser. However, um, and even chaver people who are chaverim who are makbid atig meisters, they even if they're begging for food, they do not need to take. They do not need. They're not required to take meister from the food, but they could be makber on it if they choose to. That's hachsanya demai, and if you can, and feeding traveling soldiers. Back in the day, it was common for soldiers to um, knock on the doors of the people who they are around, who are around the area, and get food from them. It was a chiyuv on the community to feed the soldiers. Now there's a machlokas whether they're passing through. If they're passing through, just sitting down for a plate of food and they're leaving right away, then they can eat the mai. If they are staying overnight, then even for one night, then it's an issue of then they're considered to be some sort of resident, and therefore they would have to take the mai. They would have to take meiser from the demai. Rabbi Gamliel hayamachil es poalav demai. Rabbi Gamliel, Anas Yador, would feed his poor workers demai. Rabbi Gamliel held that since the workers are poor and they're allowed to eat the mai, then therefore it's permissible for him to feed them the mai. Now, as we don't pass like Rabbi Gamliel, because as the employer, it's your obligation to feed your workers, and they're not eating their food; they're eating your food. And therefore, you have to take meiser off of your food before you give it to the workers. Yeah, true. That when they leave, when they're done working for the day, and they're going to go to somewhere else, and they're going to go ask for free food, and that food does not need to be. They could have the mai and not have to take meiser on that. But if they're working for you, and they're in your employee, then they then you have to take meiser on the food that you give them. Um, Continuing, Gabbai Staka. So now, what about the collectors who collect from, let's say, Tomchi Shabbos, for example? Okay, they or like Sheres plate. They are collecting food from the people and they're distributing it to the Aniyah organizations. Beishamai Omrim, Beishamai says, Nostin as Hamu'usar L'She'eno Ma'aser, that you can give, they give the food that they took, the food that was, they gave the food that was already mafresh meiser from to a person who's not so makbid on it. To the guy's not gonna be nichshol in it. Um, and ve'eshe'ena me'user lemaiser. And the untied food, the food that has not yet been taken to its masters, they give that to a person who is makbel to the masters. And as a result, each person is going to receive from charity. Each person who's receiving charity food is getting food that was meiser. Excuse me. It's always a that fun to like sneeze and bleed knows when you're on Zoom. It's going public now. Whatever. Um, yeah, because you want to make sure that the people who are not so makbid in Meiser, they're going to be given food that was very makbid Meiser. People who are makbid in Meiser, they can get food that is not good, that is not yet been taken Meisers, and then they can take up Meiser from that. So you want everyone to be eating from food that was very Meiser. That's according to the Tanakh. The Tanakh. The Chachamim say, "Govin stam mechlikim stam." That the collectors they collect the food without differentiating between where it came from or who it's going to, and they distribute it to all the people in town, no matter who they are. They're not playing those games. The road to the second, and the poor person who's willing to tithe the food, he'll take the meiser on it. Um, you know, Chaim, they relied on the aniyim to take meiser on their own food. Going to Mishnah Beis. Mishnah Beis talks about several situations that a person must be careful to take tevel and the that they don't fall into the hands of an amaretz. I wrote said lachzam ala yarak hakim. I mean myself. Person who is carrying a load of vegetables that are tevel or demai, and he wishes to trim the leaves off the vegetables in order to lighten his burden. The leaves you could eat. Well, yashlich yaser. He may not distribute these trim leaves unless he takes meiser from the first. So you have different produce where the leaves are edible. So if they're not edible, then it's not a problem. But if the leaves are edible, or the leaves or the shells or the peels, if they are edible, then you have to take meiser off of those before you throw them away. Okay. Now we're going. The next case we're going to be talking about is by by a purchaser who makes a kinyan. So kinyan is done by harbah, by lifting it up, or by mashicha, by pulling, depending on the item being acquired. So if you're buying metaltalin, you like they think you hold it in your hand, then you pick it up and you hold it in your hand. If you're buying, let's say, an animal or car or some larger item, then you have to like pull it. I mean, I guess driving the car is probably considered metaltalin, or like leading the cow and like pulling the cow on the reins or on the whatever they use to pull the cow or the animal. That's considered, kinyan. Um, and and the kinyan is good even if the money has not yet been paid, right? Because Mashiach and and Hagbah is works for kinyan even before it's paid for. So now the question becomes: Halokeach yarek manash. Someone's buying bundles of vegetables from the market on Amaretz, and he puts it into his cart. He puts it into his truck, So now it's his. Luckily, it's his. The nimlach lahachzir. And before counting the total bundles in order to determine that sale price, he changed his mind and decides to return them to the store. I don't want it. I didn't pay for it yet. It's not mine. I want to get it back. Lo yachzir ad sheyasir. So the law is he cannot return it until he takes meiser from it. But since he already put it into his cart with the intention of taking ownership on it, then when he returns the vegetables to the seller, which he did not pay for, he put it back on the shelf. In effect, he's selling them back to him. So you can't sell Demai to an Amaretz until you take Meiser. Very interesting thing. I wonder if they're makbid on that Eretz Yisrael nowadays. Like if you go into a store that was not Meiser yet, if they're makbid on that, if you pick it up and you put it back down, like what the story? I don't know. I have to ask a person person. So what actually happens over there? It's not no gay here in America because we don't have too much Meisers over here. But it's also very interesting when you go into a grocery store and you put something into your cart while it's in the store, you have a shtickle. It's considered like you own it already. Yeah, even though you can't leave the store without paying for it, but it's in your cart. It's the one you want to buy. There's halacha of having it, and you're lifting it up. You're picking up the item to put into your cart, and then you're pushing the cart. So you have hagba and you have mishlicha. That's doing two things. Very interesting. She'ena mechusar elaminion. That the only reason why the sale is complete at this point is because there's a set price per bundle, and all that is needed is to know the number of bundles. All right, so maybe if you didn't have the price yet, then maybe it's a different story. Okay, the next case. If, however, while he was still in the midst of purchasing, he saw another load of vegetables that was better than the first. He decided to buy those instead. So he's looking at the first bin, and then he turns and walks, and he's not 100% decided on his items yet. Then he turns to the second bin and he wants those instead. Like you're working into an esrog store. It's my season now. So you come in and you're looking at one table. And you have a couple of mine, but you haven't fully decided yet. And then you go to a different table and find a showroom over there. I'm not gonna get into types and prices right now. But so what do you do over there? Are you even shubit to the first ones that you picked up? This is mutter the haksi b'nei. He's permitted to return the first ones without taking meiser because he did not perform a sheikh. Right, so therefore, returning them is not considered to be reselling, and the buyer is not responsible to take meiser. Very interesting. Very, very interesting. Mishnah Gimel. Hamotzi Peros B'derech V'notl La'achla. So if someone found produce on the road and took it to eat it means that has something that you found on the side of the road that has no identifying feature. Therefore, it's considered to be hefker, right? Someone lost it. There's no simanim on it. There's no chiva v'shos seveda, and he can keep it. And then he changed his mind and decided not to keep it for himself. Instead, he put it into a secure spot on the road for anyone to take. So, lo yatzniya I you may not put it. He may not put it in a guarded place until he takes mice right. Once he lifts up the produce, the plans to eat it, it became his, and then he has to give meiser. Even if he says to leave it, he still has to take the meiser out. But if he took it originally in order that it should not be destroyed, never meant to take ownership of it. It was sitting there in the middle of the road. It would have been run over by the passing vehicles or animals. So he picked it up to move it. He had no intention of taking ownership of it. Putter, then he does not need to take meiser because it was never his intention to take ownership of it. Kol davar she'ein adam rashad l'machur demai. Whenever a person is not permitted to sell it, if it's demai, lo yishlach chaver demai. So he may not send as it. He cannot send it to his friend if it's demai. If he can't take it, sell it, he can't send it to his friend either. Rabbi Yossi mati b'vada of avad shiyodiyana. Rabbi Yossi permits sending even a small amount of tevel as a gift, as long as he lets the person who is receiving the gift know that it has not been meiser. However, Rabbi Yossi agrees with Tanakama that person may not give a small amount of the Demai as a gift, even if he tells the person that's untied. So why? Because since the Demai is not as severe as Tevel is, even if Yossi is concerned that he's going to be negligent in it and slip up. And going on to Mishnah Daled. So now we're going to talk about giving meisered produce to people who are not trusted in meisers and shvius. So the question is, if someone brings produce that was taken meiser and it's not shmita, because it's nowhere near the shmita year, to a kusi or to a Aretz who's a miller, to grind the flour. What's a kusi? A kusi, after the Galus of Shvatim, after the 10 tribes were exiled, the non-Jewish residents of a town called Kusa and other areas, they were brought in by the conquerors to live in the desolate land. And then there was an attack from the lions. The lions started to attack everybody. They got so scared that they converted to Yiddishkeit. But they did not keep the mitzvahs properly. So therefore, they don't have a full status of being Jewish. So we suspect that their produce is untithed or it's shmita, and that's an issue. And that's an issue. So regarding these cases, it remains in its original status regarding meiser and shmita, meaning that the flour that the miller returns to the owner is presumed to have been made with the tithe and the non-shmita flour, wheat that he gave the miller. But it could, because even though the kusim and the aretz are not trusted regarding meisers and shvius, we're not concerned so much that he exchanged one customer's wheat for his own wheat or with other wheat from the customer. That much we're not cautious that for. So now what if the miller is an idol worshiper, an idolater? So if you bring your wheat to an idolatrous miller, Demai, and the flour he receives returned is Demai, because we are concerned that the flour was we are concerned that the flour that was made from wheat that ours gave the idolater to grab. We suspect that the idol worshiper is playing games over here. So then, if he's playing games, then why did you give it to him in the first place? That's a different question. I trust you enough to grab my wheat, but I don't trust you to take to like, give me back what's really mine. Interesting topic over here. Going on. A mafkid peros of eitzel akusi or eitzel am art. Someone leaves his mice produce for safekeeping with a kusi or with an am aretz. The cheskasan, the maestros, the shvius. It remains in its original status regarding maestros and shvius, and um, you're not concerned that they play any games. So no. So what if you're wise at the Eitzel ha'ovikachavim? So if he leaves the produce for safekeeping with an idolater, keperosov, and the produce that the idolater returns to him has the same status as the idolater's produce, and um, which are not subject to the laws of Maestros and Shvius. So you have no concern over here that they're taking produce that belongs to someone else. Rabbi Shimon disagrees and says, Demai, no, the produce that he received back from the idolater is Demai, because he is choshesh that the idol worshippers exchanged the produce for some other stuff, and therefore it's no good. Okay, Mishnah Hey, let's go. I noticed that Fundakis, someone who's a chaver, gives raw food to a woman innkeeper who's an aretz to cook for him. Meiser who knows it. You must give meiser from that which he gives her. Before he gives her the stuff to cook, he has to take a meiser on it. The esher who knows it, and that which he takes back from her, because she is suspected of changing the food with her own, therefore he has to give meiser on that as well. But Rabbi Yossi disagrees. He says, "Ain't Anna crying or mine? We are not responsible for swindlers. You know, if she's acting deceitfully, we have no obligation to protect her of her actions. Ain't a meiser elamash who no tomimenu bavad. Therefore, he only takes meiser on that which he takes back from her, and not the raw food that he gives her. If you're gonna play games, then we're not protecting you." And finally, Mishnah Vav. Hanosel lechamoso meiser eshu nosin la the eshu notel imena mivnei shehi chashuda lachluf esa miskalta. One who gives raw food to his mother-in-law to cook for him must give meiser for what he gives to her and what he takes back from her, because she's suspected of exchanging that which spoils. The mother-in-law doesn't want the food to spoil, so if he's giving her like food that's not so fresh, she's going to out of the goodness of her heart switch it with food that is fresher, and so that he will eat so that he will eat her food and she will eat his food. So in order to avoid that, he must give meiser from both batches of food. Amar Rabbi Yehuda says, "Road say he kis the sekadas bita ulusha michasna." We suspect that she'll exchange her son-in-law's food, that she desires the well-being of her daughter, and does not want her to eat food that became ruined, and she is embarrassed on account of her son-in-law to return the food to him that became ruined. So she's going to switch it in the kitchen and not tell anybody. But Rabbi Yehuda's opinion was not accepted by the Tanaim, and they maintain that they say that the shviger will return the food that her son-in-law gave to her. Mother Rabbi Yehuda agrees with the Chachamim. The of the Chamosh Shvius, in the case of someone who gives his mother-in-law non-Shvius food to prepare during Shvius, she'ena chashuda lachlif achil as bita Shvius. That even if the non-Shvius food he gave her gets ruined, she is not suspected of exchanging it with produce of Shvius and thus feeding her daughter produce of Shemitah. And because although Yehuda is concerned that the mother-in-law might replace her son-in-law's food with produce that was not meistered, he agrees that she would not replace it with Shemitah because Ami Aretz are more careful with Shemitah laws than they are with Meiser. And therefore, the Chaver do not be concerned that his mother-in-law returns Shemitah produce. And that is all for today. See you tomorrow, Mr. Shem, for Perek Dalit of the Demai. Have a wonderful day.